In a quaint suburban town, where the sun cast golden rays on white picket fences and manicured lawns, lived a young woman named Emma. At 23, she was the embodiment of privilege, born into a family of wealth and status. Her father was a successful businessman, and her mother, a socialite, had a reputation that echoed through the corridors of high society. Yet, amidst the glitz and glamour, Emma felt a void that her riches could not fill. From a young age, Emma was captivated by the tales of love that transcended race and class. She had always envisioned a life where love knew no boundaries, and her heart longed for someone who could fill the emptiness she felt. It was during her time at university that she met David, a charismatic young man who was pursuing his dreams with fervor. David was Black, and the moment their eyes locked, Emma knew she had found someone special. Their connection deepened over late-night study sessions and shared dreams. David introduced Emma to a world filled with passion and authenticity that her own life often lacked. They laughed, shared secrets, and explored each other's hopes and aspirations. Emma's feelings for David grew stronger, and she began to imagine a future where they would build a life together. As their relationship blossomed, Emma confided in her stepbrother, Jake, and her stepmother, Leela, about her feelings for David. Jake was a couple of years older than Emma and had always been protective of her, while Leela, married to Emma's father after her mother's untimely passing, had taken on the role of a strict but loving figure. However, their reaction was far from supportive. Jake and Leela shared a glance, their eyes reflecting disbelief and concern. "Emma, you can't be serious," Jake said, shaking his head. "What would people think? You're throwing away your future for a guy like him? Don't you want what's best for me?" Emma's voice trembled as she stood her ground. Leela stepped in, her tone sharp. "Emma, you come from a legacy of wealth and power. This is not just about you. Think of your family, your reputation. This relationship could ruin everything we've worked for." But Emma was undeterred. She felt the fire of love igniting her spirit. Refusing to let societal norms dictate her happiness, she resolved to marry David, no matter the consequences. Emma's wealth had always felt like a burden, a set of expectations she had not asked for. She imagined giving it all to David, a man who would appreciate her for who she was, not for her money. However, her stepbrother and stepmother were not just concerned for her. They were motivated by their own greed. They had always envied Emma's lifestyle and wealth, believing they deserved more than what they had. The thought of Emma giving away her inheritance to a Black man sent them into a frenzy of jealousy and desperation. They began plotting to stop her. Days turned into weeks, and Emma's love for David deepened. They began planning a future together, envisioning a life filled with joy and laughter. Emma shared her intentions to give her wealth to David, seeing it as a gift of love and trust. David was overwhelmed, urging Emma to think carefully about such drastic decisions. "Emma, you don't have to give it all up for me. I love you for who you are, not your money," he said. Concern etched across his face, but Emma was resolute. She wanted to be free from the shackles of her family's expectations. Little did she know, Jake and Leela were devising a plan to take control of Emma's wealth for themselves. They started to monitor her interactions with David, waiting for the right moment to strike. One night, while Emma and David were out on a romantic date, Jake and Leela went through Emma's room, searching for any documents that could lead them to her fortune. They stumbled upon a journal where Emma had penned down her dreams of marrying David and her plans to share her wealth with him. "This is it," Jake said, grinning maliciously. "If we can't have her money, we'll make sure she can't give it to him." Leela nodded, a dark glimmer in her eyes. "We need to get rid of him, Jake. He's the only thing standing between us and that money." As Emma and David's relationship grew stronger, so did the animosity of Jake and Leela. They began stalking David, creating scenarios to provoke a confrontation. One fateful evening, their plan came to fruition. While Emma was out, Jake and Leela lured David to a secluded area under the guise of wanting to discuss Emma. "Why don't you just walk away from her?" Jake sneered as they confronted David. "You're nothing but a distraction. You'll ruin her life." David, confused and angry, stood his ground. "I love Emma, and I won't let you bully me. She deserves to be happy." In a fit of rage, Jake and Leela attacked David, fueled by their greed and jealousy. They overpowered him, and in a moment of panic, Leela grabbed a heavy object and struck David. The horror of that moment consumed them, and they fled the scene, leaving David's lifeless body behind. Emma returned home, filled with excitement about her plans with David, only to find Jake and Leela in a state of frenzy. "Where is David?" she demanded, sensing something was wrong. He left," Jake stammered, attempting to maintain his composure. "He realized he was holding you back." Panic surged through Emma. "No, that's not true. I need to find him." As she searched for David, the weight of despair enveloped her. Days passed, and the authorities were called in, but Jake and Leela's deceitful plan remained intact. They had managed to convince everyone that David had abandoned Emma. In the days that followed, Emma was lost in a sea of grief and confusion. The vibrant world she had envisioned with David was now shattered, replaced by an overwhelming darkness. She couldn't shake the feeling that Jake and Leela knew more than they were letting on. Driven by her instincts, Emma began to investigate David's disappearance. She discovered that Jake had been lurking around David's apartment and realized that they were involved in his tragic fate. Consumed by anger, she confronted them. "Did you hurt him?" she screamed, her voice echoing through the house. "Tell me the truth." Leela feigned innocence. "Emma, how could you think that? We love you." But Jake's smirk betrayed their facade. "You really think we'd let you throw your life away for him? He was never good enough for you." With rage boiling inside her, Emma made a decision. She knew she couldn't trust them any longer. The love she had for David was pure and true, and she was determined to keep his memory alive. Emma had discovered a hidden safe in her father's study, where she found documents revealing her family's secrets, including plans for investments and properties worth millions. Realizing she could use her wealth to honor David's legacy, she decided to bury her wealth in a secret location, planning to ensure that it would never fall into Jake and Leela's hands. But before she could act, she needed to confront her stepbrother and stepmother one last time. One stormy night, Emma gathered her courage and confronted Jake and Leela. "I know what you did to David," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "You'll pay for this." Jake laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down her spine. "And what will you do, Emma? You're just a girl with delusions of love. You think you can stop us?" With tears streaming down her face, Emma spoke through the pain. "You're wrong. I'll make sure that David's memory lives on, even if it means I have to bury everything that connects me to you." Leela lunged at Emma, but she quickly sidestepped, causing Leela to stumble. "You won't get away with this," Emma shouted, her voice rising above the storm outside. In a moment of desperation, Jake reached for a weapon he had hidden, but Emma was quicker. She grabbed a heavy lamp and struck Jake, knocking him to the ground. Leela rushed at her, but Emma stood firm, determined to fight for the truth. But just as Emma thought she had the upper hand, Jake recovered and lunged at her, fueled by rage. In a struggle, he managed to overpower her, and Leela joined him. Emma fought back, but their greed and malice were too strong. In the chaos, Emma realized she had no choice but to escape. She fled to the backyard where she had previously dug a hole to bury her wealth. As she reached the spot, she fell to her knees, crying out for David. "I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you." With trembling hands, she began to bury her wealth, placing each piece of jewelry and document into the ground as a tribute to her love. The rain poured down, mingling with her tears as she buried the last item. As she stood up, she turned to face Jake and Leela, who had followed her outside. "You'll never have it," she declared defiantly. Her